we have to start with assessments. So they are the basis of all educational planning. We said that the starting point for the IEP was planning. Well, this is the starting point for planning, and that's assessments. And so they are designed to determine eligibility, elicit areas of need, and propose educational planning. And I can tell you they are so important. I mean, I've just learned this over, my career. If you don't have good assessments, you're not going to have a good plan. It's just no way. If you've got good assessments, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a good IEP. There can be some other things involved, but you're way far along the way to a good program. There's power in assessments. So I always recommend, that if there's any question about a child's needs or any change in a child's needs, the starting point is assessments. So if a child has an IEP and they've never had behavior problems and they're going into third grade and all of a sudden they're showing behavior problems, what do you do about it? Well, you can call an IEP meeting, but probably something you want to discuss at that meeting is doing assessments. Let's get data, let's get information, because it's really hard to create a program to address that need unless the need's identified and explained and assessed. Okay? So good assessments are the basis for the IEP components, which are present levels. What is the performance of the student currently in academics and speech and communication, etc. Those present levels lead to appropriate goals. We'll talk about those in a minute, what the school and the parents hope that the child can achieve in 1 year. And those appropriate goals lead to appropriate services. What services does the student need in order to achieve those goals? And then finally, we look at where is this all going to happen? That's the placement. Where can we have, the appropriate goals and the appropriate services take place? What is the placement that should be occurring in? So again, it's just assessments are the basis for all of this. If you've got good assessments, you're a long ways to getting a good IEP. So how does this process start with assessments? Well, there's basically two ways. There's either assessments that are initiated by the school or assessments initiated by the parent. So let's talk about the school first. It's called child find. So there's actually a legal obligation for the school district to start assessments when they have a suspicion that a child has a disability. So if they suspect a child has a disability, maybe they're really far behind in reading or writing, or maybe they have behavior issues, or they seem depressed or anxious, the school is supposed to not sit on their hands, but actually start this assessment process to determine whether the child should be on an IEP. Doesn't mean that the child necessarily will be found eligible, but they've got to start the process and look into it and make that determination. I put in here, watch the SSTs. That's what we call them in California. They're called student study teams. And there's nothing wrong with a student study team. Sometimes what happens is the teacher might notice some problems with the student and talk to their administration, and maybe there's kind of an informal meeting, maybe the parent's present in that meeting, and they talk about the issue, and they talk about, maybe we can do some things in the classroom kind of without creating a 504 plan, maybe do some things in the classroom that might help the student. And there's nothing wrong with that, doing that, starting that way, if you really think that that might be appropriate. The need is not so severe. But the problem is if you continue these SST meetings month after month after month, and 6 months goes by or 8 months go by and nothing's changed. The student isn't improving, maybe the student's even getting worse. At some point you have to abandon the SST and say, okay, we need to start the assessment process for an IEP. And I put here, the obligation to assess a child includes areas relating to the suspected disability. So it's not just, oh, we think that the child might have autism, let's just assess for autism. You know, there might be areas that relate to that, such as communication skills or occupational therapy with sensory and so on and so forth. So they have to include those as well.